Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder of Streamlined Properties and the team leader of Streamlined Properties on Market, brokered by eXp Realty. Whether you are looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Welcome back to another week of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. This is it, a half century. Episode number 50 is coming on shortly. Before I get there, give you your regular podcast reminders that you're probably used to by now. But hey, it's not 6 minutes of ads. It's just me telling you, if you like this podcast, it would really help us if you wrote us a 5-star review, liked, followed, subscribed on YouTube, so you can keep track of those 10-minute clips that we post on YouTube from every episode. These are the things that help us as podcasters. You know, we grow the podcast that way. And I can tell you, I personally really appreciate it. This week for the Half Century Show, we have Tim Lyons, who is a lieutenant in the fire department of New York. He's going to tell you how regular people can do extraordinary things in real estate right now. This is episode 50 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Tim Lyons. Tim is the co-founder and managing partner of Cityside Capital, along with his brother, Greg. They are also the co-hosts of the Passive Income Brothers podcast. Tim has been with the New York City Fire Department for 18 years and is currently a lieutenant in the borough of Queens. Big real estate after that. Tim, welcome to the show.
Jonathan, thank you for that intro and thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, man, let's get going where it started because you've only been investing not that long, right? Only 3 years? 4 years?
Yeah, it was really November of 20. I started with a 3-family property, and then
awesome. So before November of 2020, did you have interest in real estate growing up? Had you thought about it? How did you get to real estate?
I really got to real estate because I was a burnt out W-2 worker. I'm a New York City firefighter. I love that job. I'll do anything for anybody. It's been the ride of a lifetime, as one can imagine. And I was also a registered nurse in an ER. That was like my side job. Everybody had a side job, whether they were contractors or small business owners, nurses, PAs. We had them all. But 70, 80, 90, 100-hour weeks were the norm. And the deeper I went into financial education, Jonathan, I really found equity was the way to wealth. And it wasn't going to be saving my way to wealth. It wasn't going to be my pension. It wasn't going to be my 457. Those would help, but that was the accumulation model. And I was more interested in today. We were just talking before we started. I got little kids, 3 little girls. I want to be able to maximize that today and not when I'm 65.
Yeah. And was it also that real estate was a vehicle that you weren't going to potentially be in the face of death every single day? I mean, it's like
that helps. I think that's one of the wins that my wife had in her win column. But yeah, that certainly helps.
Yeah. And so were there other people who are obviously in the fire department or in similar industries who had been investing? Or were you the first one in your department who wanted to get going? I know there's always side contractors there, but that's sometimes a mess. So were you the first person or were there other people inside your department who had already started doing it?
As far as I know, the way that I'm doing real estate, I'm the first person. As far as being like an owner of a 3-family, no. There was plenty of guys who had either kept their original homes and rented it out or inherited homes, or they did well on the side and they bought rentals. You don't run into it. I wouldn't say everybody does it, but I would say through my career, I've bumped into guys and I've been surprised by some of their portfolios.
Yeah. And so when you got started, how did you get started looking for that first 3-family and how did you know you wanted to focus on multi to start?
So I was super scared in the beginning. Being from New York, Jonathan, everyone's guilty until proven innocent in my world, or it used to. I'm
a New Yorker, so I got you. Yeah.
Hearing podcasts about building teams and investing out of state, like that just seemed like very far off for me. I wanted to be able to ride past a property. I wanted to mow the lawn. I wanted to shovel the snow. I wanted to be the landlord. I wanted to collect the rent. I wanted to do all that. So I knew, is this something that I'm going to focus on? Am I going to be good at it? Or is this something that I actually hate? And I'm not really that handy, even though I'm a firefighter and like mostly like all firefighters are handy. I'm like the 0.01% that's not. So, I didn't want to do a single family home because it was something about that mental block of having 100% vacancy if somebody were to move out.
Yeah.
So I started with that 3-unit, and the top 2 units paid for the entire property, and the third was going to be the profit. So that made a lot more sense to me. And I did it with a partner, a friend of mine, because I just wanted to de-risk it like as much as I could. And then when I did it, and it wasn't so bad, and I think I had that analysis paralysis that everybody talks about, because I was like, do I do an LLC? Do I do it in my own name? Do I quit claim deed? Am I allowed to do a quit claim deed? Should I do this type of financing? I really got into the weeds instead of just failing forward and learning by doing, which is actually the way that I was able to propel myself into multifamily.
You talked about analysis paralysis, and one thing that I always say about that is it's not really a true paralysis. It's more based on confidence. Did you feel like at the time you just, whatever resources you were using or people you had around you that knew about real estate investing, it just wasn't enough to get you off the bench and into the game at the time?
No, because the people I knew who had real estate portfolios were either, like, in my eyes, very wealthy, or they inherited a property. So it wasn't like they were saving money to go buy properties. And in New York, it's very hard to cash flow. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but in the New York metropolitan, New York City, Long Island area, even Westchester, if you go a little bit north of the city, like the homes are just very expensive. And you can't, I would argue that you probably can't hit that 1% rule.
No.
A lot of times when I heard people investing in New York, like they have capital, they'd buy a property, they'd rent it out, but they probably were losing money every month and then just not telling people about it.
Yeah.
And then in 20 years or 30 years later, when they have the thing paid off, like they look like a hero. Oh man, look at that guy. But it probably for them wasn't the cash flow centric investing that I'm involved in today.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's what's important to know, because when you're in forums or you're talking to other people and they're talking about their 1% rule in the Midwest, you're like, that's not really how it works. I grew up in Brooklyn and in Westchester on weekends. I live in New Jersey now. Impossible to hit 1% rule. We have a few investors who have, but it's usually more units make it more likely. But when you're looking even in Jersey City, which is comparable to parts of the city or Bronx or Brooklyn or boroughs, you're going to be maybe 0.75% rule would be like amazing. And sometimes half is solid because you're doing more for the asset. Like you said, long term, there's always going to be appreciation in these areas. But if you're getting an investor group with someone from Kansas City, they're going to be like, how can you buy something for $2 million? That's only $10,000 a month rent. That's what you get.
It is around here,
Yeah. So knowing that, how did you start to understand which assets were going to long term make you more money?
I think as soon as I had the proof of concept, like really, like literally that first like couple of months of cash flow, I said, all right, this thing works. Like now I have a little bit of proof of concept. Let me dive into all things real estate. So I actually, I affectionately termed it retirement from the hospital, and I went all in on real estate. And I just,
all in meaning you're still doing fire, but it's your side job is now real estate.
Yeah. My side job was still doing real estate. Listen, just a little side note. Firefighters, we work like 24-hour shifts, right? And then we have 2, 3, sometimes 4 days off in a row. So it's a very, very flexible schedule. So when I say all in, that's what I did on my days off, like all day. So, but anyway, so I really got educated. I really leaned into audiobooks, conferences, meetups, networking phone calls. And don't forget, I started November of 19. I decided to...
Good stuff coming.
I decided to retire from the hospital in February of 2020. And I hadn't even heard of COVID yet.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, a month later, it's hashtag, let's take 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah.
And as everybody knows, like that's when I started my real estate journey. That's insane. Like people were saying they're going to cancel rent. They're going to be massive foreclosures. There's going to be all sorts of stuff. The world is ending. Oh my God.
Yeah.
The reason why I think I was able to push past that was number one, education, right? I had already been reading tons of books, audiobooks, podcasts, right? Number two was I surrounded myself with like-minded folks in a mastermind type setting with a coach that had been doing the thing that I wanted to do. And he was amazing, right? So even during the pandemic, especially early on, I had moved out of my house for 9 weeks and I moved into my mother-in-law's house, because I work in a very poor neighborhood in Queens and people were literally dropping dead on the streets of COVID. Yeah. And all we were doing was CPR. We didn't know a whole lot. I had a brand new baby at home. So I moved out.
That was common for first responders, doctors, nurses at the time. They had to stay in Airbnbs and stuff at the time.
Big time. Luckily, I had a place to stay, right? But instead of getting into a terrible mood about it, I just decided to lean into it, right? And I really credit that period of my life with coming out of my comfort zone, making calls to brokers, making calls to not investment banks, community banks to establish banking relationships. And it was funny because some of those early calls, Jonathan, they were like, dude, we're trying to process PPP loans. And we're talking about multifamily real estate. What's wrong with you? Who are you again? And I'm like, all right, my name's Tim Lyons. But you know what? During that period, commercial real estate, as and your listeners probably know, it's different from that residential 1 to 4 unit, right? It's just, it sounds complicated. Net operating income, cap rates, above the line expenses, below the line, P&Ls, rent rolls. It sounds really complicated. But when you understand the pieces and you understand how to put the pieces together, and build out teams and build out a process, it's really not that more complicated than your residential 1 to 4 units. I partnered with my mentor, my coach, Chris. He did a 43 unit syndication in York, Pennsylvania. I had absolutely zero experience in raising capital. And at the end of the due diligence period, he gave me an opportunity of a lifetime to join him on that journey. He said, Tim, can you raise any money or you want to give it a shot? And I'm like, do not count on me for any sort of capital. It was a $5.7 million deal. We had to raise just around $3 million. And he had done 6 or 7 full cycle deals by that point. So he could raise the money by himself. So armed with a Gmail account, I just went down the list.
And some time on your hands.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. I just went down the list, like who I thought had money, college roommates, aunts, uncles, neighbors, whoever. And I was able to raise $150,000. And I thought that was incredible. I'm like, man, it's like COVID. The world is ending. The stock market just went down by 33%. And I'm able to raise some money for a multifamily deal. So that's when my brother Greg and I, we started Cityside Capital. And we really decided to work together to build the brand, to build the business into real estate.
Yeah. And how did you guys know that you wanted to eventually go this big? I was looking on. It's so now you've partnered in over 1.4 billion and more than 6,000 multifamily units. And that's pretty quick. What was it between the partnership between the two of you that kind of knew, hey, we need to build this structure because we want something to take off?
I think it's a few things, Jonathan. Without sounding dramatic, we grew up in a very modest upbringing. Divorced parents when we were very young. Money didn't grow on trees. It never went without. But I think both of us really came away from that experience saying, look, we want a little bit something better than what we had. And we were able to work really hard towards that. And we were aligned on our values and goals to do that. Also, during the pandemic, I walked away from my $30,000, $40,000 a year side job. He also got half pay from his old role at his old company. So he was home and I was home and we said, look, this is crazy. Like you're getting 50% pay. I just took a pay cut by voluntarily retiring from the hospital. Let's really make this happen. And we were aligned and we've only had one fight, Jonathan, in this whole time. And it was over the website. So
yeah, that's a good fight to have.
It was a good one to have. It was a productive.
Who won?
I did, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. We talked a little bit about analysis paralysis in the beginning. What was the one thing that helped you do that first deal? What was the one thing that finally got you out of that little state where you just can't make it to doing the deal? Was it the partner, the actual deal, or you going out and seeing properties, like you said, which was important because you wanted to be hands-on?
You know what? I'd heard too many podcasts, like on Bigger Pockets or Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold. I heard too many podcasts of regular people doing extraordinary things. Teachers, firefighters, cops, accountants, stay-at-home moms, you name it. And there's a podcast out there. I'm saying to myself, if they can do it, why can't I? And it was really that confidence piece. I had some money put away. I'd already bought and sold my own primary residence twice. I understood the financing. I've always been a student of personal finance. I understood the pieces. I just had to take that action. Once I took the action and had the proof, I said, if I can do it for 3 units, why can't I do it for, say, 43? And after that 43, we very quickly partnered on 144 in South Carolina. It just started to grow and I started to have more of that proof. And I understood the fundamentals of real estate. Being in that mastermind, being with that coach, population growth, job growth, looking at the metrics. How do you underwrite? How do you get the data? All that stuff just made sense to me. And then when you have that, I'm going to say it's very easy. It's easier to make those bigger decisions.
So moving forward, what's your guys' goal? Obviously, you've gone really big so far, but what are the goals for you, and how are you finding your partners that you end up doing these larger deals with?
Are you familiar with the broker-dealer model of raising capital?
Yep.
Yeah. So after we did our first 3 deals, we joined a broker-dealer. So we got our securities licenses, our Series 82 and our Series 63. And we joined a broker-dealer that only focuses on raising common equity from retail investors, 1031 investors. And the guy who owns the BD also raises institutional capital. So it was something that we were very excited about, raising capital from being from the New York City area.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to get our door kicked in at 3 a.m. for raising capital outside the boundaries of what we were supposed to do. So this was very attractive to us because we were going to be guaranteed constant deal flow from high quality operators with a chief compliance officer, with in-house underwriters, with third-party due diligence firms in a done-for-you type of product. And what I found when I was trying to raise money for those earlier deals was that those are real issues for LPs, right? How do you know who to work with? How do you know who to trust? Especially the New Yorkers. Like we already talked about, everyone's guilty till proven innocent, right? Bernie Madoff, everyone's got a Ponzi scheme, right? So like to be able to work with a broker dealer and to produce some of this documentation with due diligence, it helped a lot of people to understand the product, to understand how it can benefit them. And that was attractive to Greg and I. So that's how we were really able to scale so quickly, was because we worked with great operators in great markets across the Sun Belt mainly, and we had a constant deal flow. So that's how we were able to scale.
Yeah, and constant deal flow, like you said, vetted operators, vetted people who want to be involved. And right now, I'd also say, because I think, your point about New York, of course, we're making fun of our home state, but still, like right now, also social media is a big deal. There's a lot of people who claim to be amazing syndicators out there. And it's probably all fake for a lot of them, because it's so easy to create something on social media that looks good, that is a house of cards. Have you found that, or have you not had to run into that? Okay, you have. So where have you seen that? And I know that's another advantage to the model that you're working.
Look, if somebody and this is just me talking off the cuff, right? But if somebody has the time to really make a robust media empire, do they really have the time to run a property and asset manage and acquire? And I used to look at these social media profiles and be like, man, I really better step my game up. If you look at my YouTube channel, like I have 100 subscribers. Like I haven't put the time in to do that because I'm doing so many other things. Seeing some of these other people, I've now realized that it's not really what you see on social that counts. It's the wins and the losses in your experience column. And that's what we just concerned ourselves with, versus going to a conference and then listening to the guru tell you, hey, just put your iPhone up and start talking into it and you'll raise millions of dollars. Yeah. So that's just what we did.
Yeah. Let's talk about the mastermind a little, because it seems like finding that mastermind and coach originally was something that really helped give you the confidence. What did the mastermind mean to you? Just being able to network with other investors at your level, below your level, above your level, and then have a coach to guide you through. Because I think a lot of people are looking for that, but there's really a right time to go into it. And maybe you got into it at the right time.
When you're around people that are all kind of rowing in the same direction, it really helps. Number one, keep you accountable, right? So every week we would have our wins, our losses, what we're working on, and we'd go around the room. And that's just one little piece, like that accountability piece. And I would feel guilty if I didn't underwrite a deal, if I didn't make the calls I said I was going to make. But also having people that are ahead of you and behind you, but you're all going in the same direction. It was awesome if you had a question about underwriting, insurance, due diligence, whatever it might be. There was always somebody that could answer your question, either in an email, a phone call, a Zoom, right? We all learned how to use Zoom during COVID.
Yeah.
But you know what? I found everybody asked a lot of questions, because if somebody else had a question, Jonathan, I was probably thinking the same thing too. So it really helped propel us forward. And during COVID, best practices, right? How are you going to show an apartment when you had to be 6 feet away? How are you going to collect rent? How are you going to do a value add project? All of these things were happening in real time, including financing drying up, and how do you navigate all this kind of stuff. The value of the mastermind was incredible. And this is coming from, again, a guy who was very skeptical about a lot of things. Kept on hearing about podcasts, people saying I spent $100,000 on coaching and masterminds. And I was like, what? Yeah. I almost drove off the road the first time I heard it. And that ended up being me. Very powerful stuff.
Yeah, I found, and we've had a lot of guests who've talked about it, some who have done zero coach, like mentorships, and then others who have paid the big bucks for that. And I think people confuse the big bucks isn't always a mistake. It's really always about what you're going to do with it. And a lot of people need to pay the money to give themselves the accountability to know I need to get this out of it. Because if you pay nothing and you do nothing, you're really at your sum of the loss is nothing. But if you pay 50,000 and then sit on your ass, that's 50,000 in the hole where you could have finally turned it into something. And especially like you, if you said you have a spouse and kids and you toss $50,000 on an investing program, you better go get that money back.
Right. My wife's like, Dave, are you doing your homework? Are you underwriting deals today, babe?
Yeah.
What are you doing? You know, like,
But that's good though. I mean, I think that for people who are in relationships or families and they have kids, like everybody does need to be on the same page because you're trying to create a family legacy. Like you said, you have 3 daughters. I'm sure your goal is to be providing properties for them and then eventually teaching them along the way, like how it works.
Absolutely. And just to stack on top of the coaching, I've now had business coaches, right? I didn't know how to do email funnels. I had no idea how to do automations, CRMs. And where was my highest and best use of my time? Figuring out a CRM and how to use it, or paying somebody to figure that out with me or for me, right? So yeah, even our podcast, the whole thing, that wasn't always the way I thought. But as I grew into this niche, it made way more sense to do that.
Yeah. And so what type of, are you making acquisitions for yourself just on your own for your family, or are they all built into Cityside Cap right now?
No, they're all built into Cityside Cap. I like to joke that Greg and I are actively passive, right? Because we get to see the behind the scenes for 9 different operators, 7 multifamily across the country, 1 self-storage provider, and another industrial triple net lease guy, or company, I should say. And we get to really dive in. Do we want to do this deal? Does it resonate with us? Is it in our buy box? Because Greg and I invest in nearly all the deals that we put out to our own investors, because we want to capitalize as an LP as well, right? So Cityside Capital will be doing the offering alongside the operators, but we'll also be investing as limited partners on the side. So, I call it actively passive. But listen, we're still figuring this out, right? At some point, we may just want to go do our own thing and fold up the licenses and just do the Greg and Tim show somewhere. But right now, the way it works, he still works as a director of real estate for a company down in Virginia, and I still work as a lieutenant in the fire department. It just works for right now.
Yeah. I talk to our listeners, though, a little bit about keeping that W-2, because I think there's so many people out there, especially younger, who are like ready to ditch the W-2, but you need money to invest. You can't make your money just from saying you're going to become an investor from nothing. How important, even if it is like you're probably tired, but like you said, fire has a great schedule, just like pilots have a great schedule. It's 1 day on, 3-4 days off. So you have the availability to do. What would you say to people who are ready to ditch their W-2, but they have $10,000 in the bank?
Don't ditch your W-2. Unless, look, people are resilient, right? And if your back is against the wall, you're going to make something happen. If you're a voracious learner and a doer, you're going to make something happen. So it's taking that inventory of who are you, what are your goals, what are your aspirations, and what are you willing to give in return for something that's going to be monetary, right? I've met incredible people in the last couple of years, Jonathan, who have made a lot of money selling courses, flipping homes, building software from scratch to fill a need. It's incredible what people can do. If you have 10 grand to your name and the rent is $2,000 a month, I don't know that I leave my W-2 job, but what I would do is get up at 4 a.m. and get 2 hours of content in. Instead of watching TV or Netflix, I'd cancel everything and go all in on education. Maybe join a coaching program.
Yeah. And you guys, obviously, you have a podcast, and this obviously podcasts are ways for people to get this extra learning in now. It seems like the coolest thing to me about podcasts, especially for when there's a ton of episodes out, like if you look at Bigger Pockets, there's 800 episodes. If you're new, you can scan them and just find something that literally is perfect for you right at the time. Listen to that episode and take it from there. You don't have to go in order just because they're in order. 100%. You can see something and say, ooh, I want to learn about actively passive. Oh, Tim Lyons, I'm going to listen to this one. That's what's so cool. How has it been for you guys doing a podcast in terms of, I always say, I love doing a podcast because I get to talk to cool investors all the time. And I literally learn stuff on every episode. Has it been the same for you guys?
Big time. Being able to reach out to somebody and ask them to come onto your podcast is incredible. And then all of a sudden they're saying, oh, I'm glad we had a great show. You got to go talk to this guy, right?
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden there's a warm intro. And then I'm like, wow, I just heard this guy speak at a conference that we just paid $5,000 for. And now I'm going to get his cell phone number and his email address and converse with him. We had Ryan Serhant from $1 Million Listing on our show.
That's awesome.
I saw him on a stage, and 2 weeks later, he's on our podcast, because we had a VIP dinner that we went to. Just little things like that have been incredible. So we're having a great time. We started December of 21, so we're maybe a year and a half in, and we're just loving it.
Yeah, but are you like me? Every time, I'm sure I'll get off this and I'll be like, oh, wow, Tim said something. Now I need to go down that rabbit hole. I'm down a rabbit hole every time I finish a show. And it's like, well, I can't do all this stuff. But that's what's so fun about real estate investing. It's so diversified. There's so many different types of assets out there. Are you having that same thing as I am?
It was part of my 2023 goals, to not go down rabbit holes, to really focus on the list that I had. So that wouldn't happen.
And then someone comes on and talks about land flipping and you're like, that's pretty cool.
If it's the same guy that we had on, I literally was about to buy his course the minute that podcast was over, and I was going to set up a VA system and do the whole thing. And I said, wait, what am I doing? It's part of my 2023 goal is to not go down the rabbit hole. But yes, I totally agree.
This week's episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing is brought to you by my investor-friendly real estate team, Streamline Properties on Market, brokered by eXp Realty. I have more than 30 agents on my team, and we are investor-friendly. We work traditional buyers and sellers, but we also focus on investors. So whatever your investor needs are in the state of New Jersey, parts of Pennsylvania, parts of New York, and a small part of Nevada, we have you covered, as our goal is to figure out first what your investment needs are, and then how we can help you reach them. Let's get back to the show.
So the way that you guys are investing, when something comes to the table, what's a definitive feature that is going to make you guys invest through CityCap? Is it because it's not always going to be just the metrics? And commercial metrics are much more helpful than in just traditional residential. But what are the things that you're looking for as buyers now in these passive active syndication type deals?
I really want to know the story. I want to know the story of the property. I want to know the story of the market, the submarket, because look, I'm in New York, right? I'm not going to Dallas every week. I'm not going to Phoenix every week. We have teams for that, but I need to know why, right? And if there's a compelling why, then I want to see the supporting evidence, right? So it's really building out that layer. What's the story? Build out the evidence, and now consider the whole package, which is why I love, I'm not a great underwriter, but we have an underwriting team. Right. So I can just email them and call them and say, hey, what did you think about the underwriting for XYZ project? Especially in this crazy time of uncertain insurance rates and the debt financing. Yeah. And there's a lot that goes into these properties. But Greg and I, we don't believe in investing in flood zones, right? So if it's in a flood zone, it's very easy. You pull up the FEMA flood map, you type in the address. If it's in a flood zone, it's probably a hard no, right? Unless there's some sort of story around it. But generally speaking, it's got to be in a growth market. It's got to be in a stable market. I'm not looking for the ups, the really high ups, because then you can really face the really low downs. But then that's why we have our broker dealer. We have 20 groups like ourselves. We have an investment committee that we talk these deals over with. So when something makes sense, we do it. Also, we're not that big of a company yet, right? So we can't do 2 or 3 raises in a row or at the same time. So we really have to be selective about where our investors are, what are they looking for, right? And what fits into our criteria.
Yeah, that makes sense. As a smaller group, you don't want to be going back to the same investor right away. They just invested in one deal and then you're like, oh, here, I have something completely different, but we need you again. That makes sense. As part of our pre-question, I asked you, what is the most important trait for a real estate investor to have? You said willingness to learn. This obviously, based on everything you've said, makes sense. But why do you think it's so important for others out there to have that willingness to learn more to get somewhere in investing?
More than one time, Jonathan, I've had very successful, investor prospects go, how is it possible that Tim the firefighter, Tim the ER nurse knows more about depreciation and tax benefits and cash flow? I'm a surgeon. I'm a this, I'm a that. And, what I always tell them is, listen, all it is education times action, right? Like, you're super educated as a mechanical engineer. I don't know the first thing about physics, right? That's you. I dedicated myself to this. And so having that openness and willingness to learn, even if you are a highly successful W-2 worker, the people that are the easiest to work with on the investment side are those who are willing to say, I don't understand this, but you do. Can you help me, walk me through this, right? Because listen, when we talk about money can really be one of those religion, politics, and money, right? Things you don't talk about at a party. But when you have that openness and you get that vulnerability, listen, I don't understand this, but you do. Let's talk about it. Those are by far my favorite people to work with.
Yeah, I agree. I think that an open discussion about money is really important to, like we were saying, especially for like your kids, my kids. I think that's something that hopefully the new generations are less like concerned about. But if you read a book like A Millionaire Next Door, you find out that the people with all the money, like, you don't know that they have the money. The people who are flashy and look, they maybe don't have all the money that you think that they do. Some do. You're not buying $80 million houses if you don't. There's different ways of being, quote, rich these days. And money really equates to a freedom, which is part of why you look to real estate investing, right? You know that your career at the fire department has an end game. And then you're looking for something that's going to be able to take you to the next step, right?
That's 100%. I started this when I knew that I had maybe 6 or so years left. And I said, you know what? I really want to do something else. I'll be 42 and I want to do something else in my life. I don't want to stay in the firehouse till I'm 65 and then all of a sudden find out that maybe my health isn't so great or that pension wasn't as golden as everybody thought it might be at that point. So yeah, that's how I got into it.
Yeah. One other question I asked you was one thing that makes you a great guest. And this I really love because I think this is what people really need to know. You said, I'm just a regular guy who is defiantly committed to learning and taking action, which of course goes back to the learning. But I think the regular guy part is so interesting because I believe truly that anybody can become a real estate investor. Doesn't matter if you went to college, doesn't matter if you graduated high school. It's just about, like you said before, what you want to learn and who you want to learn from and what you're willing to do to be successful. So do you think that kind of mindset that you have can help other people just say, yeah, let's do it? You said that's what happened to you. You saw people, you're like, oh, look, they're a nurse. They got 6 properties. Is that what kind of helped you get it? And hopefully you can give that to other people as a way to get them to do it as well.
Yeah. Look, if you get stuck in the social media loop, you're like, wow, these people are just so put together and whatever. And then I meet these people at conferences or I have dinner and drinks with them. And I'm like, they're just regular people. They just have a really robust social media platform, but we're all just regular people. What I found was when you have the same shared values, listen, if we could all have cash flow to support us and our families and be able to give us optionality, I think really 99.9% of the population wants that, right? We want to have that optionality. I think everybody's really going in the same direction. Harness that, right? Learn from others. What I found also is that people that were like 1 or 2 rungs up the success ladder ahead of me and Greg, they always had a hand down, right? They'd take our call. They'd pull us right up to their level. And we try to do that now too. I found in real estate, especially commercial real estate, people are really open to helping people out. And from what I've heard about business and Wall Street, it's maybe not like that so much. But yeah, it's just regular folks. And listen, we all didn't invent real estate. We didn't invent the financing models. But if you learn how to use them to your advantage, if you know how to use them to create a tax advantage for you or using leverage in a smart way, this is just simple kind of stuff. It's really math. And it's just it's an incredible way to get wealth.
Yeah, I find real estate so uncompetitive. I don't know why people think it's competitive. There's not a ton of inventory out there right now, but there's literally properties everywhere you look in most states, especially in a state like New York, even in a city, it's everywhere. I don't know why they get this. I think that the sharing of information is like the unsung hero of real estate investing. You have to bring something to the table, have that willingness to learn, like you said, and then be able to, like you said, now that you guys have experience, you're able to give that experience to people who have less than you. Because sometimes when we teach other people what we know, we learn more about what we're doing. Have you found that now, as you've gotten more experience and you can help people with less experience, that helps you get even farther as well?
Yeah, learn it, do it, teach it, right? If you can't teach something, then you don't exactly understand it. So that's what we tell. That's how I do it in the firehouse, right? Probies come in, you got to learn it from us. I want to see you do it, and then I want to see you teach the new guy when he gets there. And if you could do all three of those things, then you're proficient, right? Same thing with real estate. Same thing with raising capital. I've had people call me who I look up to and be like, hey, I just want to see if you want to be able to hop on a call and share best practices for raising capital. And I'm like, what? Like, you want to talk to me about raising capital? That's insane. But yeah, let's do it. Or, hey, can you come and give us a masterclass on raising capital? And I'm like, man, like, you're one of my idols.
That's awesome.
So that's, it's all the same stuff. Learn it, do it, and teach it. And I think people really appreciate when you do that for them.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you this because so one of the things I've always thought, I have a big on-market team as well with 32 agents. We work with a lot of investors, but I've always told everybody that police and fire and similar jobs like that, they're really ripe to be first-time investors because you have steady job, steady income, you have dedicated time off, and most everybody should respect what you do as a first responder. Like and you have loans that are available. You have fire and police loans for your personal residence. You're going to be able to do okay through local credit unions for investment properties. Are you finding that people now are more starting to take advantage of that in fire and police like you did and understand like there's a lot of benefits available to get started earlier when you're younger, when you have that as your profession?
It's something that I'm trying to work very hard to get the message out. And I now find that people have been talking inside the New York City Fire Department. So when I go places, sometimes to an event, they'll be like, hey, you're the guy. Can we talk? Can we get coffee? Can we do something? I want to learn how to do it. Because I think a lot of people after the pandemic have realized that the W-2 trading your time for money, I think values have changed. People want to be home more. They want to be involved in the family more. So how do you do that? And I think real estate is one of those things that is popping up on a lot of people's radar as something they can do, something that's attainable. And like you said, as a first responder, there's all sorts of loan products. We have access to capital in different places. So I would agree with you that those folks are probably ripe for at least a first-time rental property.
Yeah. And especially though, for personal residents, I feel like police and fire and any first responder, you can get that first property to live in, whether it be a condo or a small house early because your rates are going to be good. It's protected. And then that's going to be your first investment. Maybe you live in it for 4 or 5 years, enjoy it, but then you leave, like you said, and then there you go. There's your first investment property as you go figure out. Then maybe you start house hacking along the way to get going. It just seems like a perfect match because there's so many loan portals that are available for the benefits because of the job that you guys do.
And I do see some of the younger guys doing that. They'll do like a house hack because they're never home together, right? Who's doing it or who's leaving, right? So it's not really like you're on top of each other.
Yeah.
And there's like an inherent sense of trust between the first responder community, right? So even if somebody moves out, like you really don't have to look far for another somebody.
Yeah. For sure.
For,
yeah. That's a great point though. If you're a young fire police person or similar first responder, you get yourself a 2-family, you're going to hack one of the rooms in your 2-family and rent the other ones. Probably just go down and see who else is looking for a better place. Because you're never home. So a lot of people are like living in rentals that they don't care about, but they can live in something better and then start to help them figure out how they can do it.
100%. Totally.
Yeah. Every single month I tell myself, I live in Mendham, New Jersey, and I'm like, I got to go down. I got to talk to local fire and police, but I know it can help. It's just such a great portal, but you're a great example of how you can just do it. But like you said, you have to get to the point where you just finally get out of the paralysis stage and just get out there, try something.
Just do it.
Yeah. Since you guys are passive active on that side in this kind of LP type of business, do you go look at properties as much as you would like? Or are you so focused on the larger deals that you don't really do that right now?
Yeah. I mean, I gotta be honest, being active in that first property wasn't my favorite experience.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do it again, I'm going to definitely have property management. Like I don't want to be the guy anymore. I just, from where we are right now, we're still seeing really decent returns without having to sign on loans or to do all of that. So for where we are and what we're doing and what our goals are, being the actively passive guy is just fine for us. In the future, Greg and I talk a lot about our 5-year, 10-year goals. I could certainly see us doing our own thing, especially when we're both not working our W-2 anymore.
Yeah.
But that's another 2, 3, 5 years away. Did you get that last piece?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see that coming as well. Like it's on the horizon, but I think it's really important that like landlording wasn't really your thing, the one-off landlording, because I think too many people are looking to get it. They're like, oh, sure, I'll just get a 4-family. That's not fun to manage. Like it's terrible to manage a 4-family, 4 tenants, 4 problems. They're all arguing with each other. And if you it's just silly to me that people call that passive investing. Like that's not passive at all.
And I'll tell you what, if I do that again, I realize now that the newer vintage properties is where I'm going to be going. Like, I feel like people try to go for the lower price properties, which brings you into a maybe lower socioeconomic area, which has a lot of other issues. And then you're buying, like my first home was a 1920 built wood frame balloon construction home. I had to do a new roof. I had to do siding. I had to do a lot of stuff, but I got it at a good basis. I could do all that. If I had to do it again, I'm buying either new or in the last maybe 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've been counseling a lot of investors to buy new. You're going to get the rent roll. You're going to have very low CapEx. It's different. If you're buying high cash flow, you're buying into problems. That's why it's high cash flow. You can't get high cash flow and all the benefits of the property being perfect. It just doesn't work like that. If you're going to buy into a property like that, I like buying into fully done now. And I think it's a smart move, especially in multifamily, because you're reducing all of the issues. It's great if you can choose your own tenants as well.
100%.
Yeah. So for a brand new investor, based on your experience, what would you tell a new investor in today's market in terms of what they can do to get started? I think I have an idea of what you might say, but let's hear it.
Yeah, I always argue that like pulling out your iPhone and looking at properties is probably the 5th or the 6th thing you should do, right? I would say you have to start with education, whether that's going to meetups, podcasts, books, whatever, getting coaches, but then building out a team, right? Before you build out a team, I would say pick a market, right? What market makes sense to you? Is it going to be your home market or is it going to be a market that's far away from you? If you're in New York City, you might want to look in, I don't know, Memphis, Tampa, Sarasota, Dallas, I don't know. And then if you're going to do that though, you need a team, right? So you need a broker, you need an insurance guy, you need an attorney, you need a CPA. And I think the CPA piece, once you understand how powerful real estate investing can be, you need a CPA that understands real estate. If you call your guy or your girl and say, hey, look, do you do real estate? Do you understand real estate? I guarantee you 10 out of 10 times they're going to say yes. But the thing I always say now is if you broke your ankle, you wouldn't go see a neurosurgeon, right? They're both doctors. They both got MDs next to the name, but you're going to want to see the ankle specialist.
Yeah.
Same thing with CPAs. So once you have all those, a property manager, right? Once you have all those figured out, now you got to figure out the asset class. Do you want to do singles, doubles, triples, quads, multifamily, self-storage, medical office building? What makes sense to you? What resonates with you? And then once you have all that figured out, now you start looking for those properties. And if none of that seems like something that you want to do, then a passive investor, a limited partner might be more your speed.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure. Where's the best place for people to get in touch with you? Is it at citysidecap.com?
Yes, and I'll actually give you my cell phone number. It's 516-521-7762. And my email address, tim@citysidecap.com.
Yeah, and you can find you on Instagram. I know your name's in it, but it starts with Cityside Capital, and then there's some underscores and Tim Lyons in there. You'll find them.
Cityside Cap _Tim Lyons.
Yeah. All right, man. Look, I appreciate your service as a first responder. Being somebody from Brooklyn, I appreciate it even more. So thank you for that. And it was great having you, I guess. I look forward to staying in touch as well. And I look forward to seeing what's next for you. I know you got a couple of years left, and then after that, we'll see what's in the cards.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, man. Absolute pleasure. This is Jonathan Green. That was episode 50 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Tim Lyons of Cityside Capital. We'll see you next week. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with me, Jonathan Green, And I just want to remind you, and this is always an uncomfortable part, I don't want you to think that I'm begging for you to like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you have to do for the podcast, leave a 5-star review. But if you like the podcast and you think it adds value in the real estate investing sphere, then just do me a personal favor. Like the podcast, follow it, share it when you can with your friends, and be so kind as to write a 5-star review if you believe it deserves a 5-star review up against what else is out there. I would really appreciate it, and I hope you keep listening.